Welcome back to the Turpentine Diary. Stories of my life experience. So today I want to talk about my spiritual awakening, Kundalini, something I knew nothing of before 2015. There's a lot of people going through it now, though, and so I feel like it's important to tell my story. So our bodies are much more than what we feel they're capable of. Kundalini is an energy that resides generally dormant in the bottom of your spine, and when activated, it climbs up your spine and activates your brain. Pineal gland is a little pine cone gland in between your left and right hemispheres of your brain. And we are electric beings. And when that happens, it's like a veil has been taken off of you. You see things more clearly. You hear things more clearly. You feel things more clearly, and you just know things. You just know them. Even if you had these gifts prior to the awakening, they are enhanced. They are enhanced. And, you know, sometimes through trauma, you're always on edge. Your nervous system's always on edge, and sure, you're more attuned. But this is different. This is it's like your body gets plugged into an electrical outlet. That's what it feels like. And so when it happens, you know, you're more apt to have clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, and claircognizance, which are at a deeper level of being human, you know. So with that being said, in 2010, I ended my 25-year marriage. I had a beautiful 40-acre farm up in North Carolina, conservation farm. Our children, who were teenagers, came down to Florida with me. We left this place that I never thought I'd leave. It was my Eden. I thought I'd be buried on the property. But life changed. Circumstances arose that made me know that I needed to shift my life into a different direction. I had been a stay-at-home mom for 19 of those 25 years. Close to it, 17. Stay-at-home mom for 17 years. I lived off the land. I worked the land. We had made it into an Eden. It was a conservation farm. We'd been under a WHIP contract, Wildlife Habitat Incentives Program. We'd all worked our asses off on that farm. We had 3 acres in muscadine grapes, 4 different varieties. We had 3 different varieties of blueberries, 200 plants, bushes for you pick. You know, people come out and pick them. We had, and I sold at the farmer's market. But we had plum trees and heirloom apple trees and peach trees and, oh gosh, you name it, we had it. Wildflowers. There were trails through the property. The kids grew up under a clear night sky with stars, an acre spring-fed pond that you could swim in. It was Eden. But there was a shift in our lives, and I didn't want to leave, but I was pushed. I was nudged. So we end up back down in Florida, in Tallahassee, which I didn't want to be in, but that's where my family was from. 5th generation Tallahassean and 8th generation Floridian. Both of my parents are from pioneer family stock, and our roots run very deep in this land, in the Panhandle, Florida Panhandle. So came back, had never had a cell phone, and hadn't held a job outside of the farm. And so I was skilled in basic life skills. That's what I was skilled at, and I was very good at it, and still am very good at it. So I got a bank teller job at a local bank making minimum wage. And I was there for about 6 months when another bank came in and bought us out. I was there the night that the FDIC came in on a Friday night and shut them down. That was an experience in itself. Then I got recruited to another local bank. Was there for about 2 years, a little over 2 years, downtown. Made a lot of lasting friendships from that position. But then they got bought out. And when they got bought out, I took a severance and retention package. And I went to school. I went to massage therapy school at Aveda Institute, got my dual license as an esthetician as well. I walked into that school not knowing why I was doing it. I'd always been interested in massage therapy, but I was 49 years old, close to 50. I was 49 years old because I graduated in August, and then on my 50th birthday, I went on a cruise. So I started that January. I signed up, and I walked out after I'd signed up, and I thought, what the hell did you just do, Donia? But it changed my life totally. I started in January, 10 and 12-hour days. Ended up graduating at the end of August, and then took my state NBLEX, which was not easy, but I passed with flying colors in October, and then opened my spa in Midtown in Tallahassee in November. Worked my butt off through Groupons, retained clients through that, and I was off. So it was a great experience to own my own business. My life had totally shifted, from not making minimum wage and not being able to, I couldn't even afford groceries hardly. It was tough. And I didn't get on welfare or food stamps or anything. I don't know, I just didn't do it. I probably should have though. Pride, I guess. That Southern thing. But anyway, so I had started having, I thought I was going through menopause, but it was different because I had been through menopause very quickly, but I would get up with almost like a mercury taste in my mouth. It was very metallic tasting. That went on for a while. I was having very vivid dreams when I would wake up. It was exhausted sometimes, very much fatigued. So I'm in this business, and I'm trying to make a go of it. I have just ended a relationship that I was in, and I'm living by myself in an apartment. Really, the first time it was a duplex, and great landlord, and it was the first time that I'd lived by myself in 25 years. So my kids were out, they were doing their thing, and I was independent Donia at 50 years old. So with that being said, I ended the relationship that I was in, and there were some lasting effects to that because he didn't want it to end, and there was some trauma that went along with that, and I'll talk about that later. But while I was massaging one day in my business, I was massaging this girl's back, and I felt an electrical charge in the palms of my hands. And now I had always, from a young girl, been able to bounce energy off my arm and feel it. And I just thought, I didn't even ask it because I thought everybody did that. And come to find out, they don't all do that. Now, I was just more sensitive and an empath I later found out. But this electric on this client's back really piqued my interest. And so I looked into it farther, and synchronistic things started to happen, and I came across a lady that was very grounded in being a Reiki master, and she was from the direct lineage of Usui. And so I signed up for a class with her to be attuned in Reiki. At that same time, when I had moved into my apartment, I had, about 6 months prior, I had gone to the pound and gotten a cat. And the cat was a Balinese cat, and I named her Yoko. And she had some wild in her. She hadn't really had a steady home life. I think when I got her, she was already 3 months old. And she had started to settle down until I moved, and I had to leave her where I had been living for a couple of weeks, and she didn't like that. And so when I was moving into my new apartment, I picked her up, and she scratched and she bit me right here. Well, I had been playing tennis 5 days a week. I ran every morning, so I was in great physical shape, and I just bandaged it up and went on. Well, a couple of days later in this new apartment, I let her out on the porch, and she ran off, and she had a tag on her collar that told her name and where she was from, my phone number and all that stuff. So she never did come back. I put notices out, and I thought, okay, well, you don't want to be here, then fine. In the meantime, I was, busy doing stuff, working at the spa, and it had healed. Everything had healed in here, but I was having some issues back here. It was real tight and kind of sore, and I had a Baker cyst right here on my joint, which is a feel like a liquid cyst that you get right here on your joint sometime, and it's painful. In fact, they say the old-timey way of getting rid of it is take a Bible and smush it and it pops, but I didn't want to do that. Good grief. So I went to the doctor. All right, in the meantime, I've got the spa going. I am running, I'm playing tennis. I've got this new place. Yoko's run off. But I've got this cyst, and the old relationship that I was in wouldn't leave me alone. And there were trackers involved on my car. There were court dates. It was stalking, and there was drugs involved. And it was a bad time for me emotionally. In the meantime, I go to a Reiki workshop to be attuned in Reiki for a weekend at the Miccosukee Land Co-op. Well, I'm out there and I'm attuned, and when the first day I feel electricity just shooting through me, it was a powerful experience. And I was with 3 other people in that class. One who I've kept in contact with throughout all this ordeal. Seeing auras. She was seeing auras shoot out of my feet, and it was mind-blowing and eye-opening. So I was attuned that weekend in Reiki 1 Usui. In the meantime, I'm trying to get this in order. In the meantime, I come back home after I have been attuned, and I go to Apalachicola, down to Apalachicola with some friends of mine, and they had been sick, And so I thought that I was feeling bad, didn't want to eat. And so I thought, okay, well, I've caught something from them. So when I got back into Tallahassee from being in Appalachia over the weekend, I decided to go to the doctor and have him look at this Baker's cyst because it was bothering me when I massaged. So I go to the doctor in primary and I tell him, I say, okay, this is bothering me. I'm not sure what it is. And it had there was a lump here. And he said, you know what? That doesn't look good. He thought it was cancer and he wanted me to get an MRI scheduled. And so I said, okay, all right. And so in the meantime, he shot me up to get rid of this Baker cyst with steroid and sent me on my way. All right, you ready for this? This is how synchronicity happens. So I'm waiting on an appointment for the doctor to schedule the MRI. All right. And I just had this steroid shot put in. The prior weekend, I was attuned in first degree Usui Reiki. The next morning, I get a phone call saying that my cat has been run over. I need to come get it. 2 blocks from my apartment in front of the Catholic school. So I get up and I go over. I had a basket. I take her to the animal health clinic right there on Tennessee Street. And I'm in there and they do all these x-rays. They can't find anything wrong with her, but they don't know what's happening with her head. So they tell me to bring her home, lay her in a confined spot, and see how she does. So it was cold that night. I can remember it being cold. And so I bring her home and I put her in a little linen closet, and every time I'd walk away, she'd cry. So I laid down with a mat and I Reiki'd her through most of the night. In the meantime, I've got an ex-relationship that just keeps going. I mean, it's drugs and you never know what's going to come next. So I'm in high alert with that as well. Plus running the spa. So that night, I'm laying there, I'm raking her, and about 2 o'clock in the morning, she dies. She meowed. I was awake. She meowed, looks at me, and she died. So I picked her up and I said a prayer for her, and it was cold, so I put her in the back of my car. Well, that next day, I bundled her up and I took her into the veterinarian's office. And while I was in there, just something made me ask the vet if this could be cat scratch fever. I didn't know at the time it's called Bartonella. All cats have it. It's in their saliva. But if they bite you or scratch you deep enough, it gets into your blood system. And so here I am, attuned in Reiki 1. My cat's died overnight. I've gotten steroid shot put in this cyst right here, and I've got a lump that I'm waiting for them to schedule for an MRI because it may be cancer. So when I asked the vet what she thinks about the Bartonella after they took Yoko to have her remains disposed of, she says yes. She said, and I tell you what, she said, go in there and demand a blood test because they're going to poo-poo you. And I immediately left there, could hardly raise my arm, went over to the doctor's office. They poo-pooed me, but I got the result. I got the form to go over there and get a blood analysis. Went right over there. They withdrew the blood. The next morning I get up and I can't even, my arm won't even, this is the range of motion. and I've got this tight band through here. So I call my sister, who's a nurse, and she says, oh my God, get my son, to come pick you up. Don't drive and get to the hospital. Well, the hospital was only a mile and a half away. So by the time I got up there, I was delirious. My spine was in an S, and I was close to death. Apparently what had happened was I did have cat scratch fever, Bartonella, and that steroid shot spread it everywhere. It was on my pancreas, it was on my liver, it spread to my internal organs. And so I almost died. They pumped me full of intravenous IV through antibiotics, and Lord, I was on antibiotics orally for probably 2 months before I got better. In the meantime, I'm still massaging because I had to maintain it. I had to pay my bills. So through that, the relationship court system put papers out saying that there would be no contact ever for life. And throughout this ordeal, I had almost been run over. Coming home from work at night, rear-ended, and it scared the shit out of me. And so I immediately called my attorney, and we got that taken care of. I never thought that I'd have to go through something like that, but it was scary. And so from that, I was told to go to a psychotherapist and talk about it because I had been diagnosed with PTSD. So I did. I'd never really been to a psychotherapist. Oh, I'd been to counselors when I was younger. But so I said, okay, I'm going to adult up and I'm going to go to a psychotherapist. And I'm so glad I did because that was life-changing too. I was referred to the psychotherapist from a lady that I had met at a birthday party while sitting around the fire. And she would play a part in all of this as well from an energy standpoint. But when I went to the psychotherapist, he was going to, it's called EMDR therapy. And what it is balancing the left and right parts of the brain. And so what I would do is he would ask me to look in the corner, and he would do his fingers like this, and I'd follow the finger, but at the same time, I would be remembering the situation that caused the trauma from PTSD. Well, I'd never done anything like this before, and I did it, but I didn't know if it was going to work or not, but he told me that I was a prime candidate for it. And this is what EMDR therapy and how it works. A structured therapy that encourages the patient to briefly focus on the trauma memory while simultaneously experiencing bilateral stimulation, typically eye movements, which is associated with a reduction in the vividness and emotion associated with trauma memories. So, how are traumatic, I can't talk, slow down here. How is trauma stored in the brain? So when a person experiences a traumatic event, adrenaline rushes through the body, and the memory is imprinted in the amygdala, which is in your brain. And that's a part of the limbic system. And the amygdala holds the emotional significance of the event including the intensity and the impulse of emotion. So it's stored in your body. This, that's how important your nervous system is. It needs to keep being regulated. We all have trauma. Some have more than others. And this EMDR therapy worked for me, and I'll tell you why. Because he told me, he said, if you've got any other stored up, pent up trauma, it may come out. And I want you to know that it may take a few days, it may take a couple of weeks, but if it does, you can always contact me. Well, I was going down Miccosukee Road probably 4 days after I'd had this EMDR therapy. And I was presented with a memory from when I was 11 years old. And I cannot believe that I had tucked that back in my brain and forgotten it. But I had. And what it did is it gave me validation that I wasn't bad, that I wasn't a bad seed, that I wasn't the black sheep of the family, that trauma had happened to me at a young age, and due to that trauma, I had made decisions subconsciously that put me in a pattern of needing to be loved, feeling like I needed to be loved. I'll tell you what happened. So I grew up in the Episcopal Church and had family members that were priests in the church. The Episcopal Church is a beautiful church. I love the ceremony. I love the smell of the wax, of the candles, and the aromatherapy with the incense. There's a confirmation, and when you come of age, you are confirmed into the church, and you go and you learn all about the church, and you become a church member. That's different from being baptized, when, this is confirmation that you're going to go about this path in a righteous manner. And, love others as you love yourself. Well, the memory came back that I had been molested, not by one, but 2 priests. And I thought, oh my God, it just all came back. It just all flooded back. And I'm not going to go into detail, but it was while I was being confirmed into the church, after school, taking classes, over more than one occasion. And I was solidified, and it was verified when I remember being in a room with a young blonde-haired boy about my age, and the memory that came back to me. I immediately turned around in my car that day when the vision came back to me, and I went to the church. And I walked in, and I asked to see the confirmation book. And when I opened it up, way back when, in the church that my grandmama helped found, she helped Sunday school,